Jarowski reporting that six-time All-Star Kyrie.
The only way you can take CBS Sports Radio 1140 with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and listen to us anytime, anywhere. You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. The nation and the league arrive in Las Vegas in 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. And now, here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
It is Sunday. It is time for Silver and Black Today again. I am your host, Scott Gobranson. That is true, at least the last time I checked. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. It is, of course, the dead period in the NFL. Makes it very hard for all of you out there, football fans, Raiders fans, because there's just not a lot going on. But that doesn't mean we don't have a quality show for you here today, because we do. And we'll go over that a little bit today, including an in-studio guest where we're going to talk about the life and times of one of the Raider Nation's favorite players in franchise history. And that is not an understatement. And that is one Lyle Alzado, number 77, one of the meanest, toughest dudes you will ever experience on the football field. We're going to talk to him. I should say we're going to talk to Jim Duffner, who wrote a book. And if you're watching, by the way, you can stream us on radio.com live. You can also stream us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, video-wise. And I'm showing the audience on video Jim's book, which we're going to discuss today, Lyle Alzado Story 77, Nobody's Invincible. So make sure you tune in to that. That's coming up a bit later here as well. So we'll go over some of the news. We'll go over some questions we have. We're going to talk about stadium food even, because with the Raiders coming to Las Vegas, every stadium, every city has like signature foods. What will it be in Las Vegas? We're going to discuss that as well. But first, I want to introduce my co-host today, one Mr. Kelly Kreiner. Kelly, how you doing this morning?
I'm good, man. I'm glad to be here as always.
Yes, you're above ground and breathing. I'm thankful for that, as I know you are. We're a man down again because our good friend and fellow co-host Chaz Osborne, again, who is the International Man of Leisure, is in Vancouver. He's up at the BC Lions game on special assignment, right? Special assignment, Kelly, right? He's doing something up there.
That's
right?
a good way to put it. You know, I mean,
we hope he gets back over the border. That's my only concern with Chaz.
If he got in, he's got no problem coming back because, I mean, if there's any issue, they want you. Canada wants you out of the country if you have any problems.
That's true.
So the fact that if they let him in, getting out's the easy part.
Well, the amazing thing, too, is I saw somebody, Twitter is such a vast wasteland. There's some great stuff out there, don't get me wrong, but there's just the underside, the negative side of it is just so bad, it's overwhelming. But there was somebody, and I stay out of politics, especially on this show. It's not something that I get into. But the immigration issue is big, right? People talking about immigration needs to be fixed, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. This person said, anybody who says that it's easy to get into this country illegally has obviously never gone to a border crossing and had to wait in line. And I thought to myself, yeah, because they don't do that when they come into the country illegally. But nonetheless, that's Chaz up in Canada, so we'll see what happens with him and whether he'll get back, and he'll have a special report when he gets back, I'm sure. But, Kelly, the other thing is this week we saw, again, in the NFL, not a lot going on. The NBA is dominating the news cycle. And I think if you look at what the NBA has done, Kelly, it's exactly what the NFL did. If you go back to when I was a kid and you were a zygote or whatever you were at that point, maybe, because you're 10 years younger. But if you look at it, the NBA copied what the NFL did. The NFL used to shut it down after the Super Bowl and then you had the draft, and after draft and the mini camp, it just went into a black hole. Now, you could argue that right now there's not a lot going on, true, but it's nowhere near what it was like. But the NBA, and I'm not an NBA fan, but you can't get away from it right now. It's even dominating over anything that's going on in the NFL.
It is, but the NBA's biggest problem is, especially for the casual person, free agency is more interesting than their season. This is the time where NBA is more out there than when they're actually playing their sport, and that's a problem in the long run. It's like you're capturing this, 10 days, there's 355 left in the season.
Yeah, and we've talked about that too, right? The NBA being a player-driven league, the NFL doesn't have. And we've seen conversation, right, from this show over the last 6 months where people are talking about, oh, well, the NFL players are going to get what the NBA players had. And you and I have both said, nuh-uh, it's not going to happen. And I agree with that. There's not going to be a work stoppage in the NFL. I think the NFL Players Association is going to cave on anything. I don't think they have the fortitude that the NBA players had in their negotiations and all the things that have led up to what they've done and the control they've had. So to me, it's different. But with the NBA and dominating, you're right, the off-seasons now, even in the NFL, have become so important to the branding of the league and to fans staying engaged with the league that, to me, it's just an interesting study because it's all about the football on the field. And remember, we're 10 weeks away from the start of the NFL season, by the way, just if you needed a reminder. But to me, the idea that the offseason and all the moves and the transactions, which nobody used to care about, Kelly, has become such a dominating thing. And that people are writing. Now, on our website, we've been pretty low-key lately. We haven't done a lot, practically nothing, other than put the show stuff up, because I just don't believe in writing stuff to write stuff to fill a vacuum. Now, if I'm making a ton of money off a website, then I totally get it, and I understand why they put this clickbait stuff out there. But overall, it's remarkable that people are that interested in the offseason. NBA, true, the free agency. But in the NFL, it's a little different because you have so much more going on. But does the NFL need to do something now to maybe fill this gap between now and July and do something?
I don't think they really need to, because for the rest of the year, they are the number one sport. It's the one everything's talking about. And this is easier for the NBA to own free agency like this, because when you're only starting 5 guys, you're only playing basically 9 guys. One big person can completely change a franchise, to where in the NFL, unless it's a quarterback, you're not going to see that. And you see stars move in the NBA a lot more than you do in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
With franchise tag and everything like that, the stars have a tendency to stay in the NFL more, so there's just not as much movement, so there's not as much excitement.
That's true. And not only that, but you have in the NFL, the NBA now, because the players control, the NBA, they can't just cut guys like they do in the NFL. NFL, the rules around rosters and all of that stuff is so much different. And I just don't, again, I don't see, and we're going to talk later as we move into the year about the new deal that they're going to have to negotiate for 2020, but I just don't see that same. I know a lot of people think that the NFL players are going to exert themselves like the NBA players did, but I just don't see it happening. If you look at the unions, if you look at what they've done, it's just not the same model. It's not the same piece.
Yeah, and the big thing that, like with NFL, everybody talks about guaranteed contracts and everything like that. You'll never see those in the NFL because of the injury risk, because of the shelf life of players. Or if you do, the salaries are going to be 70% of what they are now. Because like you every time you see a deal, those numbers aren't what the deal's going to be. You're looking at the guaranteed money. You're looking at the first 2 or 3 years. And the agents love to say, hey, I got this huge number, even though everybody knows you're not going to hit that. You start getting into guaranteed salaries, those numbers are going to drop. They're not going to look as impressive because of, you're not going to, throw a lot of money at a free agent knowing that, hey, this running back's, 29 going to be 33.
Right.
This quarterback's going to be 35 when it's done. If you're guaranteeing that money, you're going to see a lot less money thrown around.
Well, and I think too with the NFL, like you said, this dead period between the end of June and the end of July when camp officially starts, July 23rd for rookies, 25th for vets, is to the game. I mean, you have guys getting hurt. You need time off. Like, it doesn't matter what sport it is, you need time off. But at the same point and juncture, in the NBA, you have summer league. That's younger developmental league. If the NFL had a developmental league during the summer, they could fill that. That's clearly not going to happen. But to me, that's the other piece here, is that because of the brutalness of the sports, the physicality of the sport, you kind of have to shut it down a little bit. And it's not a bad thing. And it allows teams, too, coming off camp to evaluate and figure out what they're going to do with some players and whatnot. But it'll be interesting to see how these – because the NBA is coming on strong with fans. It's not ever, I don't think, going to catch the NFL. It surpassed baseball. And right now, if you're not a baseball fan, it's a terrible time until the summer league starts. The NBA Summer League, by the way, Las Vegas, its sports renaissance continues. First 2 days sold out 17,500 at the Thomas and Mack Center for the NBA Summer League kickoff, the 2 first games. That event, and on Saturday, Sports Beat, hosted by Tony Cordasco in this slot on Saturdays, he had a gentleman from the league on yesterday and just talking about how it's grown. It's amazing what the NBA is. I don't watch the NBA. It still doesn't appeal to me. But you have to give them credit, Kelly, for what the league has done and for emulating and doing what the NFL has done.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Summer League was going to sell out. You've got the best player in the draft, R.J. Barrett, going to be out here. So, I mean, he is going to he's finally going to be the guy to transform that Knicks organization.
Jaw's going to be on the bench.
Yeah.
It's confirmed he'll be
So,
on the bench.
well, and we'll find out as that goes along. But the NFL still is king, and unless they do something to completely boff that, it's not going to change very much, in my view. As I hit my head on my mic stand, that's very interesting. But that'll be fun to watch this summer as they do it. We're just against our first break here in a few seconds. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the news for the week, as well as some Raiders events in the community. Great thing they did this week. AEG going to manage the stadium. And also a story, Bleacher Report, about the Raiders already thinking about another quarterback when they move to Las Vegas. I just don't get the Carr hate. I don't get all this conjecture. Talking about 2021 and it's 2019.
It's June.
It's June.
It's
You're right.
June.
It's June. All right. When we come back, we'll talk about all those things. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We'll be right back.
this morning at 11 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
It is, and I'm back. That's what they call a cold opening. Yes, welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Of course, a overcast Las Vegas, Nevada today. I actually had a little bit of rain on my way in. Kelly, I don't know if you did too, but I got a little bit of raindrops, which during the summer, raindrops keep falling on my head. Okay, sorry. Kelly just gave me a look of disgust when I started singing.
I was just going to say, you just cost the station like $5,000.
With my singing, it's absolutely horrible. I can do the Candyman can. Okay.
How about stop? Just rain, yeah, rain. I had like 7 raindrops on my window driving,
Yes.
or my windshield driving in. So.
Or was that the tears of Lakers fans? No. Anyway.
Why would the Lakers fans
They're a
have
mess.
tears?
They're still a mess.
They're getting everybody according to Twitter.
Yeah, not according to the Brooklyn Nets, who are prepared to make some signings today. Anyway, we're talking about football here, though, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things we wanted to update you guys on is if you're not in Las Vegas, you may have seen this. We, I think, talked about it during the week in social media, but AEG Facilities has been chosen to manage the Las Vegas Stadium, of course, where the Raiders will be playing next season. The company announced Tuesday that the co-owner and operator of T-Mobile Arena here in Las Vegas, of course, where the Golden Knights play and where the future Las Vegas Nuggets will play. That's my prediction. $1.8 billion stadium, of course. Go ahead. You had a comment
who
on
did you
that?
say?
I said the Nuggets.
The Nuggets ain't going anywhere.
Okay, we'll see. And then the terms of the lengthening agreement were not announced. The Los Angeles-based AEG Facilities will be responsible for stadium operations. That begins with providing pre-opening functions, the overseeing of the hiring, training of the venue's full-time staff, planning, executing the stadium's grand opening schedule, events and activities, and AEG will manage key departments such as guest services, event operations, booking, that's a big one, security, and I don't mean booking like jail, I mean booking like in acts and events, security, ticketing, finance, and human resources. So not a surprise, Kelly, that AEG, who already has a big involvement here in Las Vegas, they manage the Coliseum over at Caesars, and now will be, and of course, T-Mobile. This is a big deal, Kelly, because now having AEG on board, plus the one thing I want to say, and a lot of Raider fans already know this, but the Raiders, as far as NFL organizations go, one of the smaller ones. They've always been smaller, really, truly a family kind of business. So they rather outsource some of these functions. And in this case, with Las Vegas being such a destination city and that stadium needing other events besides football, UNLV and the Raiders, this makes so much sense because AEG is going to get all those acts. We saw Paul McCartney here the last couple nights at T-Mobile. Those big concerts are a reason why AEG is such a great selection too.
Yeah, I mean, you hear about that all the time, but if you look at how many concerts are actually in stadiums and stuff, it's not a ton. But, I mean, even if you have, say, 1 a month or 10 a year or whatever, it is just added revenue stream. That's not, I mean, it's basically free money that you're looking at because you're planning everything around this football stadium just to be the football stadium. Whatever, anything else you can bring in, you bring it in. And like you said, with the relationship AEG has all around town, this was kind of a no-brainer. It's like they're the ones in town that can pull this off because we've seen it on a, like you mentioned the Coliseum. As someone who works, at the Caesars property, that thing just prints money. It doesn't matter what they throw in there; they find a way to fill it.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses coming in November.
Unlike Paul McCartney, where they were giving away free tickets.
Were they
the other
really?
day.
Wow, I did not hear that. I actually wanted to go see. I have not seen him, but I know he's 77 years old. But apparently did really well. And Steven Tyler came on stage and did "Helter Skelter," which is one of my favorite Beatles tunes. So that would have been kind of cool to see. But no, that makes all the sense in the world. The one thing with the stadium, the Raiders' main tenant, of course, you're talking 10 games a year, not counting playoffs. You're talking UNLV 6 games a year. So outside of that, people, how are you going to fill this?
Not counting a bowl game.
Oh, I got in an argument with Tony Cardesco about that yesterday because I still don't think they're going to make a bowl game. But anyway, the point is,
gee, that was an argument.
yeah,
Like-
believe it or not, some alumni can't let go. But I think that there's other things too besides concerts. There's political conventions. There's conventions.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Right?
there's several conventions that Vegas couldn't hold because they don't have a venue big enough for like opening ceremonies and things like that. And like the American Heart Association thing is one of them because I think you needed a 50,000 seat venue or something for their massive,
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, there are definitely going to be other things that you can use now.
Sure.
Plus, you got all the weird random stuff like back in Indianapolis, you can get married like in the stadium on the field, like stuff like that. This is Vegas. You can get married in a drive-through, so you're going to have people that are going to want to do just random stuff like that. Just basically you're letting somebody in an hour, letting them. I mean, it's whatever you can get. You're going to find a way to squeeze every nickel out of that stadium.
No, there's no doubt about that. And I think too, of course, we heard about the Raiders and the not very secret acquisition eventually of Bally High and how they're going to turn that into parking and how they might do a wedding chapel there. We talked about that a couple weeks ago on the show. And so there's going to be all sorts of ancillary things happening around the stadium. And you're right about those conventions that can't fit in there. And then there's other events too that you can do in larger venues. Doesn't mean you have to use all the seating. It's just the size and scope of being able to pull things in there, whether it's equipment, whether it's car shows, all kinds of deals. So AEG being involved with that is a good thing for everybody involved, and we'll see how that all works out. Now, the other thing we wanted to talk about as we talk about the stadium is about food. We're gonna bring this through this segment and into after the break. Is around signature foods. Now, when I say Philadelphia, what food do you think of?
Pizza.
Such a smart ass. Cheesesteak.
Okay.
There's good pizza. There's good pizza everywhere.
No, yeah, it's obviously
You know what I'm saying.
It's cheesesteak, but if you talk to people that are or live in Philly and stuff, they'll tell you about the pork sandwich out there.
Oh, pork, yeah.
That because they don't want to. It's like they don't want to say cheesesteaks. It's that's what everybody So there's a pork. I can't remember actually what it's called. But I had a friend of mine that lived in Philly for 3 years, and he swore it was better than the cheesesteak.
Well, and you talk about Pittsburgh, Primanti's Brothers Sandwiches.
Yeah, screw that place.
You talk about about Chicago. You talk about the hot dogs and pizza. You talk about Italian beef sandwich. So there's all these signature foods, right?
Yeah.
And so I asked on Twitter, our listeners and Raider Nation out there about foods that they really like and feel like were representative of Oakland. So, like, what food do you get when you're in Oakland? What is the one thing, the signature food at the Coliseum? And then, of course, about Los Angeles, too, Kelly, because the Raiders were in L.A. Was there something during that time that people remember? The overwhelming thing I heard about was hot dogs outside the stadium, not inside the stadium, in Oakland, bacon-wrapped, jalapeno, all kinds of things. So I think they're coming from inside. One guy said Round Table Pizza. I guess they sell Round Table Pizza inside the Coliseum. And I actually love Round Table pepperoni pizza is my favorite pepperoni pizza. But anyway, so there was that. In L.A., it was something. Also, macaroni and cheese in the Stadium Club in Oakland is supposed to be the bomb. So again, so you think about that. So clearly in Oakland, it's hot dogs. It's extreme hot dogs, bacon-wrapped hot dogs sold from vendors, served at the amazing tailgates you see in Oakland. So what would be Las Vegas's, right? What would be, or what should be, I may ask, the signature foods that you'll find in the new stadium and around the stadium? What is it about Las Vegas? We're such an eclectic market. We are truly a melting pot here of all kinds of cultures, races, ethnicity, everything. And so we asked that question, and we want to talk about it. We're starting the conversation now, Kelly, but we'll take it through on the other side of the break. But what out of all the places you've been in the country, Kelly, what's your favorite stadium food that you've ever had?
It's funny because, being the fat guy, you think like that would be some like big thing. When I go to a game, I'm just, one, I've probably been drinking for a while. And especially if it's football, I'm tailgating. It's like bratwurst and stuff at a tailgate.
Yeah.
So I'm not really eating in the stadium. It's just, maintenance drinking till they shut off beer at the end of the first half like they did at the Colts games.
Yeah.
So, yeah, food at stadiums and stuff has never been like a big thing for me because it's always before. to where you're eating, like I said, you're eating bratwurst, you're eating burgers. I want that tailgate food when I go to something for football.
And I agree on the tailgate thing. That's what's interesting about this conversation because baseball's different. Like when I go to a baseball stadium, I think of the in-stadium food. It's just a different pace of game.
Peanuts, Cracker Jacks.
No. Like San Diego, we had fish tacos. You go to Tampa, and they have different. They have like swordfish sandwich. They have all this kind of different stuff. Even though nobody goes to the games.
I was getting ready to say, do they make 5 of them in case they don't want to their food costs go high for waste?
But the point is, football is much more a tailgate culture, right? Baseball is not a tailgate culture, so we'll have to talk about that. But we're gonna expand on it and say, okay, guys, Raiders fans, what do you want to see here in Las Vegas when you come here in the way of food? So call in 702-889-5978, 702-889-5978. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
The best place to watch UFC.
This is Jim Plunkett, and you're listening to the Silver and Black today.
Oh, yeah, Jimmy, bringing us back in. Jim Plunkett, who should be in the Hall of Fame. If you disagree with me, you're an imbecile. You looking at me? You looking at me like you're disagreeing with me?
No, I'll say I'm not disagreeing with you on that one. Yeah, we're.
Okay. I didn't think you
For
were an
once, you
imbecile.
said something that wasn't stupid. So I mean, I'm on your side now.
That's such a compliment. Thank you.
For me, it is.
Makes me feel good. It makes me feel good. All right, we are back talking. We're talking about stadium food. Listen, it is June, almost July. Tomorrow is July 1st. We're in the dead period, so we're talking about things that are interesting that aren't just rehashing the roster of the Raiders and what we might think might happen and just not have anything to go on. So we're talking about this. All right, so food at the new Las Vegas Stadium. We talked about the hot dogs in Oakland. In L.A., the same thing. And our own David Stepanian, our engineer, who I think showered today. Did you shower today, David? No. Turn on your microphone so we can hear you.
No shower today.
No shower today? It's Sunday, so you said no?
Yeah, this is pretty early.
Okay. Well, David works hard back there, but you were talking about the hot dogs in L.A. too. Same vendor, you think?
Yeah, I really believe so. It's I grew up in LA, so Tijuana Dogs is the company, but they taste pretty much exactly the same as they're both bacon wrapped hot dogs. The carts look exactly the same. They both hang out around stadiums in Oakland and LA. So I'm convinced that it's the same operation, the same brains behind the operation in both LA and Oakland.
So are you saying that all hot dog vendors look the same?
No, I'm just saying these particular two taste the
Although
same.
I will tell you, I grew up going to Tijuana and getting roadside hot dogs, little mini hot dogs wrapped in bacon. They could be some other animal, I don't know, but they were good.
Silver and black.
And so and we got to switch camera angles here because David just went off camera. He's not used to being on camera. We go back to the beauty that is Kelly and Scott. But anyway, yeah. So the hot dog.
We're professionals.
The hot dog. So in Las Vegas. So if we look at Las Vegas, and I host a show over on KXNT called Beyond the Build, where we talk about growth in Las Vegas. It's a new show, and the demographics in Las Vegas are changing. The fastest growing demographic, not surprisingly, Kelly, if you just walk around here, is Asian American Pacific Islander in Las Vegas. So if you think about the food. To me, if we're going to have a signature food here in Las Vegas, then it's got to be something Asian flared. It's got to be something Asian flared, right? To me, I'm thinking Korean barbecue. I'm not going to say poke bowls because I think those are going to go out of fashion. But there's something, Hawaiian barbecue is one of them. I think Korean wings would be phenomenal for Las Vegas with what we have. So what food comes to mind when you think of Las Vegas besides Chick-fil-A?
I think of alcohol and booze because if that's all you have. No, seriously. When you think of Las Vegas, I mean, we have celebrity chefs. We have some of the best restaurants on the planet. You're thinking about drinking when you're thinking about Las Vegas. So alcohol can be a food, But, yeah, I don't think there's one signature because that's the thing. Everybody that lives here is from somewhere else.
True.
Everybody's brought their own culture and everything like that. So there's not one thing besides alcohol that kind of fits everybody in this town.
So then we should have, because I do think you need to, if I was making the menu, which I'm not, and we'll talk about that another time, but if I was making the menu, I would have some throwbacks to the Raiders' history. So I would have one of those hot dogs that represents Oakland. I would have one of those hot dogs, if they're not the same, that represent L.A. or something that represents L.A. And then when it comes to Las Vegas, I would definitely go with something that speaks to the population and what's happening here. And to me, that is that food. Now, we also have great Mexican food, street tacos, that kind of thing as well. And what happens is, I think you'll see with the tailgating, the fans will dictate what it becomes, right? So maybe you can't prescribe it like I'm trying to, but I do think eventually you'll see something come out of that, and you'll see people go crazy where, CBS is out for a game and they're saying, oh, look what they're doing. They're rotisserie cooking a full pig in the parking lot, right? Because you have Cuban culture here, you have Hawaiian culture here, you have Polynesian culture. All those folks do some of that as well. They're island cultures, right? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Speaking of eating, though, and barbecue, got to say this, too. The best place to watch UFC 239 is at Mabel's Barbecue, and now a supporter of Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio. That's over at the Palms Casino Resort. Saturday, July 6th. So next Saturday, our own Tony Cardasco and Paul Ihander will be broadcasting live from 4 to 6 p.m. The undercard starts at 5 p.m., main card at 7. Mabel's has more than 100 beers, Kelly?
I've been to Mabel's.
I know you have.
Yes.
It's good. 150 bourbons, which is why I go there. And 100 tequilas, the best smoked meats, and no cover charge for UFC. So they're not charging, folks. Jan Jones versus Thiago Santos. Amanda Nunes meets Holly Holm. That's your favorite, right, Holly Holm? Come and join us at the UFC viewing party at Mabel's Saturday, July 6th. I'm going to be there. I'm going to have some brisket and bourbon. But I don't think they'll let us smoke a cigar there, Kelly, right?
I do not believe you can.
Yes. We have to go out
and
we can't go to the sports book anymore because they don't allow it there either.
Did you say Jan Jones?
No, a Jan.
Okay. I thought you said Jan Jones.
Did I?
Yeah.
The former mayor of Las Vegas? Live radio. It's the beauty of live radio. You make mistakes and everybody hears them. That's the way it goes.
Especially after they're pointed out by your co-hosts.
I love that, though. That's what makes us human, right, Kelly? That's what makes us human. All right. Now, this week, Kelly, we had, and send me your thoughts on the food thing. Keep it coming in. It's very interesting. This week, we had a Raiders community event. The Raiders are all over this community. I mean, they're just, every week there is something new. And this week, they did something really near and dear to my heart, and that was take care of a couple veterans. And our own David Stepanian was out there. And apparently he went to the Hustler Club after and lost the tape of the sound. No, I'm just kidding. But, David, you were there.
That'd actually be a better story.
That's why I started to go there. But, David, tell us a little bit about what the Raiders did and who they helped.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you knew that I went to the Hustler Club afterwards.
Well, look at you.
I didn't detail that to anybody, but going there at 10 in the morning. But, so it's a really cool thing that they did. So they basically they surprised these two veterans from Desert Storm who were on the waiting list for a service dog, and they were on the waiting list for over a year. So they thought that they were coming to the stadium just to do a tour. So when they brought them from the stadium onto where the workers, the construction workers, stretch every morning, they saw that they were giving them two service dogs, and they got really excited. So the Raiders teamed up with the Klein Veterans Fund to do this, and so two veterans got two service dogs.
Yeah.
And just the surprise and the look on their face, they were very excited. And I didn't know that getting service dogs was such a exciting ordeal, or you had to be on a waiting list. I didn't know that, so it was really eye-opening for me as well. So it's a very cool thing for the Raiders to continue doing for the Las Vegas community.
No doubt about it. And to see the smile on their faces, and because of the PTSD issues and all that stuff, those service dogs, and for some of their disabilities, those service dogs mean so much. They're a companion. They help them, and just an amazing thing. Another amazing thing the Raiders have done. And, Kelly, when we talk about football, we're going to always be honest on the show. We're going to be fair, but we're going to criticize the Raiders when they don't play well. When they make a move we think is questionable, we're not afraid to say it. But when it comes to these things that they're doing in the community, how can you not be a fan of what they're doing to help folks in Las Vegas, and this time it was veterans?
Yeah, and the Raiders have always been really community active. It's not just like they're trying to get goodwill coming here to Las Vegas. This isn't this isn't like some ploy. It's like, oh yeah, we're leaving one city, we're trying to get into the good graces of the new one. This is something that the organization's done for years.
It has, and not only that, but they're if you talk to, whenever you're out and you're talking to former players, because the alumni here are at all of these events. They're so active in what's going on. That's what they say. When I signed as a rookie with the Raiders, or when I came over to the Raiders as a free agent, one of the first things that we were told was, you will be active in the community. You will do good with us. It is our responsibility to do good in our community, whether it be Oakland, whether it be Los Angeles, and now Las Vegas. And oh, by the way, they're still going to be active in Oakland. From everything we've heard, they still do things in Los Angeles. So it's amazing that the three cities they will have called home, they're still active in there. They don't have to do that. So it's very good for those people who were not in favor of the funding of the stadium and whatnot. This is, again, another reason to show you that they do things outside of just sell tickets, of sell merchandise, and so on. So very good. And David, thanks, man, for being out there and for telling us about it, because, you know, we worry about you. We want to make sure you're out doing some good, and you actually were working. It was good.
You're basically making me go out to make sure I'm still alive. Right? That's why you're emailing me every week. Hey, can you go?
That's right.
You still out
That's
there,
right.
buddy? Could you please do this? Yeah.
But yes.
Thank you for your concern.
No, but thank you for going out there. All right, we're up against another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Raiders MVP. What are the odds that Antonio Brown or Derek Carr win the award? We'll get your view on that. We'll talk to Wally on the phone. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Take Silver and Black Today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back. Sunday. Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We're going to close out this first hour with a little MVP talk. And then at the top of the hour, the interview you don't want to miss. And that's with Jim Duffner, author of the book, The Lyle Alzado Story, 77, Nobody's Invincible. We're going to talk about one of the Raider fan favorites of all time, Lyle Alzado. Just amazing, and make sure you do that. Also, want to remind you, today's show brought to you by our sponsor, the local 872, the Laborers Union, the men and women building the Las Vegas Stadium, as well as Resorts World and everything else. Pretty much anything being built in Las Vegas, you can bet our friends at the Laborers Local 872 is involved. Okay, Kelly, now we want to talk about odds. We're not a betting show, but when you look at odds around the MVP award for the 2019 season, it's Derek Carr and Antonio Brown, both 100-1 odds, Kelly, against them. And Kelly, you've moved over a chair. You're getting closer to me. I'm a little concerned with that.
You're the one that told me to, so I don't want to hear it. I mean,
well, yeah, we need room for our guests, but nonetheless,
this wasn't my choice.
Yeah, and just remember, I'm married. Okay. He gives me the look. I love it.
It still shocks me to this day somebody settled for you.
Yeah, 23 years, man. Wow. 23 years. God bless her.
She's a saint.
So here's the deal, Kelly. 100-1, Derek Carr, Antonio Brown, which is really interesting to me because I think for one of them to win that award, the other one has to be so significant in it that it's almost sort of like counterproductive to cancel each other out, right?
Yeah, they really do. And I don't think either one of them are going to put up those stats because I think the offense...
Oh, you're such a naysayer.
Well, no. I just think the offense is going to be built around spreading the ball around, running the ball a lot. So it's going to, I think Ty Williams is going to have a lot of catches. You're going to see them force feed Brown some, but it's not going to be the main point of the offense. And you're just going to see somebody that's going to have a Mahomes type year, like Mahomes last year, Drew Brees, to where the Raider offense giving the ball to spreading everything around is going to keep it from that spotlight being on the one person, which is kind of what you need to win an MVP award.
Yeah, and to me, I still do not get all of the negative towards Derek Carr. We have another story written by Steve Rivera over at NFL Spin Zone this week about how the Raiders already need to start looking at 2021 and replacing their quarterback. It's like, whoa, put the brakes on a little bit. I know Trevor Lawrence will be the number one pick that year, and he's going to be a superstar in the NFL. Unless there's an injury or something crazy, the kid is really, really good. But I just don't get it, and I think that Derek Carr will have a big year because he will have those weapons. A lot of people point to the fact that, well, we're not sure who the tight end is going to be. Well, okay, fine, I get it. But with all the other weapons you have, I think he's going to have a big year. And will he be an MVP? Look, an MVP-type year, it's not something that you can prescribe. It happens. A lot of things have to go your way. They have a very difficult schedule, so that can get in the way as well. If you're playing from behind versus if you're playing ahead, it's a whole different game when you're playing from behind because of that schedule. So I don't know. And Antonio Brown, wide receiver winning the MVP. When's the last time? I don't know either.
Yeah,
I should have looked it up.
Yeah, look.
Someone who prides themselves on preparation, I didn't look that one up. But my point is, I don't see Brown. I think Brown's going to have a big year, and I think Derek Carr is going to have a big year. But to think about that, think about teams that are much more along in the journey, like the Rams and others who you could see having big years because they're playing from that perspective. So it'll be interesting. Now, Josh Jacobs, running back, rookie of the year. Does that happen? You talked about it during the break about Hard Knocks and everything and how that's going to help his exposure and all of that. People are going to fall in love with the kid.
Yeah, the exposure is going to be great for him. He's going to be huge. He's going to have the opportunity. I mean, he's going to get he's going to have the chance to get it. I just know, this just kind of hit me because I was going to say Montgomery out of Chicago is going to have that same kind of opportunity. I think DK Metcalf in Seattle's going to have
He's got something to prove, too, because he fell in the draft.
Yeah.
He's not happy about that.
They got nobody else to catch the football besides Lockett, so he's going to have opportunity.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see there. But I don't know. I think that if you look at that combination of Brown and Carr and Jacobs, you have the opportunity to have a really special year. At the same time, it's just the NFL not because of the parity and all that, but you just don't know how things are going to unfold. Injury, 2 key injuries, and your whole season changed. 1 key injury changes, and your whole thing changes.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. All right. Time to take a break yet? No. We got a couple minutes.
You want to grab Wally?
Oh, Wally. Yeah, Wally. We'll get you before we close. Our all-star caller, Wally's on the phone. You want to talk about stadium food, my man. What do you got?
Hey, anybody that's really worth their salt and knows anything about Vegas knows there's 4 things about food.
Shrimp cocktail.
$6.99 prime rib buffet.
Oh, yeah.
99-cent shrimp cocktail. Then you go down to Slots of Fun and you get the 99-cent Heineken and the 99-cent foot-long chili dog.
Oh, yeah. And you know what?
That's the list.
Wally, when I was at UNLV as a student, I used to go to Slots. When I turned 21, I would go to Slots of Fun, and then it was 50-cent Heinekens and 50-cent hot dogs. And I lived there, man, because it was cheap. I could buy food. And 50-cent Heinekens, when you're a college student and you're drinking Natural Light, you think, "Ooh, Heineken, 50 cents." It was good stuff. But, yeah, no, I agree with you on some of those things. Those are hard to serve at a stadium, though, aren't they? Well, if you're in the stadium club and you paid $50,000 for your seats, your PSL, I should say, then I see that. But I like the shrimp cocktail thing. That's come up a lot with people.
Yep.
All right, well, are you keeping cool out there, man?
What's that?
Are you keeping cool out there?
I can't hear you.
That's okay. All right, Wally, thanks, man. We'll talk to you again.
Have a good day.
You too, buddy.
Bye.
See you, Wally.
All right, so there's Wally.
Yeah, the shrimp cocktail, like when you were talking about, that's the first thing that kind of popped into my head because you think of that, and like you said, the cheap buffet and all that stuff. Those days are gone, though, man. It's no longer Vegas isn't known for that. You can still find them.
Well, yeah, you can. The other thing, though, is Vegas, with the California influence, the younger side of folks, and even people who are aging who are keeping in good shape, is the desire to have more healthy food, even when you go to a football game. Like, we're getting ready to open these coffee shops, and we're deciding, like, what keto-related stuff do we offer, right? So, like, egg bites and things like that to keep you in shape. So I wonder, too, if there's some of that, because I think there'll be a demand for it.
They're leaving California. They're not worried about that.
No, but they're leaving California, but they're bringing their lifestyle with them, just like I did.
It's a football stadium.
It is a football stadium.
If you want that stuff, go watch soccer.
Oh, boy. Soccer. Yes, soccer. All right. Well, we appreciate all you guys' comments on that one as well, because it's an interesting subject. The MVP talk, we'll get more into that next week as well, as we have some more guests. Next week as well, we're going to talk a little bit about NFL films and how it helped shape the brand that is the Raiders, right? So Autumn Wind, written by the Sables, all that stuff.
150 bourbons and 100 tequilas, the best smoked meats, and no cover charge for UFC 239. That's right, no cover charge in full sound. John Jones versus Thiago Santos and Amanda Nunes against Holly Holm. Undercard at 5, the main card at 7 p.m. Join us at Mabel's Barbecue, where there's no cover charge ever for UFC. See you Saturday, July 6th.
Being in the Army National Guard is about more than serving your country. It's about being there for your community when your neighbors need you most. The Army National Guard makes college affordable, and serving part-time can help you graduate debt-free. Do you want to stay close to friends and family? The Guard allows you to serve close to home. Serving part-time in the Army National Guard lets you have the life you want. Learn more by visiting nationalguard.com.
Sponsored by the Nevada Army National Guard, aired by the Nevada Broadcasters Association and this station.
In the wake of recent natural and man-made disasters, it's now more important than ever for Nevadans to sign up for wireless emergency alerts so they can be better prepared when disaster strikes. Emergency alert messages are sent by local authorities through wireless carrier networks. Alert notifications include a unique sound, vibration, and give specific actions people should take during an emergency, such as flood, fires, earthquakes, terrorism attacks, active shooters, and Amber Alerts. We all play a role keeping Nevada safe. If you see something, say something. Report suspicious activity to local law enforcement. For specifics on how to prepare, contact your local emergency manager's office or go to dem.nv.gov and click on Plan Ahead Nevada.
Sponsored by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Nevada Division of Emergency Management, your local emergency manager's office, and aired in cooperation with the Nevada Broadcasters Association and this station.
Broadcasting from the Dollar Loan Center, Don'tBeBroke.com studios. KXST, AM North Las Vegas. KXTE HD3, Pahrump, Las Vegas. CBS 1140, a radio.com sports station.
Sports Flash. I'm Justin Shackle. The pace slowing down a bit in London. Both the Yankees and the Red Sox not making as much noise as they were yesterday with the bats. Yankees won yesterday 17-13 here in their series finale in London. Red Sox are in front of New York 4-2. They're in the top of the fifth. Boston scored all their runs in the first inning against New York opener Stephen Tarpley. Xander Bogaerts, J.D. Martinez, Christian Vasquez all homered in inning number one. Yankees scored twice in the second inning against Boston starter Eduardo Rodriguez. Right now, 2 outs in the top of the fifth. Runner on for the Yankees and Edwin Encarnacion at the plate. Coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, the Cleveland Indians are going to try and restore some order in Baltimore. The last two nights, the O's have defeated Cleveland by the same score. 13-0 Friday night, 13-0 Saturday night. Indian skipper Terry Francona hoping his team can flush out the struggles and pick it up today because
they beat the out of us. They played better. They hit better than us. They played better than us. They pitched better than us, and managed better than me. That's this game will make you laugh sometimes. Sometimes it'll make you shake your head. Sometimes it'll about make you cry. We pick it up tomorrow and see if we can do better.
Shane Bieber will be on the mound for the Indians. Same start time for the Rays and Rangers in a matchup with the two wild card leaders in the American League. Max Scherzer takes the ball for the Nationals in their series finale against his former team, the Tigers. Dodgers have lost the last two nights with their two best starters on the mound against the Rockies. No sweat for manager Dave Roberts.
As far as kind of downturn, no. I mean, I feel every day the intent, the energy is really, really good.
They'll be back at it this afternoon at 3 Eastern. Kenta Maeda starts for L.A. against Chichi Gonzalez. NBA free agency will get underway officially in 6 hours from now. Plenty seems to be decided already, and that starts with at least one megastar. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski reported last night, six-time All-Star Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets will be meeting later today. It's expected they'll agree on a 4-year max deal for Irving worth $141 million. Reports say that's just one half of Brooklyn's plan. They're also going after Kevin Durant. And reports also say KD and Kawhi Leonard have discussed playing together. If they do, it would be with either the Clippers or the Knicks. Back to the Nets, Irving's signing would force Brooklyn to make a move with restricted free agent D'Angelo Russell. They don't intend to keep Russell if they sign Irving, and are reportedly working with Russell's agents to facilitate a sign and trade. The Lakers are said to be interested there. This is Justin Shackle.
Jim Rome here, reminding you to join me in the jungle tomorrow, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on CBS Sports Radio.
Oh, see you then.
CBS Sports Radio.
Hi, I'm Tony Cardasco. Join me for Saturday Sports Beat this weekend at 8 a.m. here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. The nation and the league arrive in Las Vegas in 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. And now, here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
All right, welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio in Las Vegas, Nevada. And we are going to talk for most of this hour about one of the fan favorite, one of the greatest Raiders of all time, I believe, and that is Mr. Lyle Alzado, number 77, played 16 years in the NFL, of course, won a Super Bowl with the Raiders, and really, not only that, was a celebrity in his own right, even outside of football. And we're going to now bring in our good friend, Jim Duffner, who wrote a book about his friendship with Lyle Alzado and about Lyle's life. And Jim joins us. We're very lucky to have him here in the studio. Jim Duffner, welcome to Silver and Black Today.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, Scott.
Awesome. Well, I have to tell you, I reading this book, and I'm going to hold it up for the folks watching on video. Jim's book is fantastic. If you get a chance, go over to Amazon and order it. The Lyle Alzado Story, 77, Nobody's Invincible. It is the quintessential page turner. You do not, once you sit down and read it, you don't want to put it down. And that's because it's real, it's genuine, and it is a friend remembering someone so close to them, the good and the tough parts of his good friend. And Jim, that's the thing with Lyle. Tell us a little bit, how did you meet Lyle Alzado, and how did you guys develop that bond as close friends?
Well, I first met him through some NFL, activity and stuff, and then he saved my life basically in a bar fight.
Yeah, tell that story. It's a great story.
Well, we were up here in Las Vegas. I was here, ran into a couple guys that I knew from San Diego. They asked me for a ride back to their hotel, and I said, sure. Walked to the parking lot, and next thing I knew, they grabbed my keys, locked me out of my own car. 4 guys were coming over to do bodily harm to me, put it that way. And I had nothing to do with it. Didn't even know they were in a beef with anybody. Well, the guys got closer. They had knives, and the guy had a club, and I thought I was going to have my lunch and end up in the hospital, and all at once Lyle came out of nowhere. So we beat the you-know-what out of all 4 of them, sent them to the hospital. The 2 guys that locked me out of the car took off, and that kind of sealed our bond.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. That story, as I was reading that story in the book, Jim, it struck me as we went on, too, and as I read more and more, that it makes sense because Lyle was such a tough guy, right? Everybody knows that tough side of Lyle Alzado on the football field, and when he was talking to the cameras in the NFL films, documentaries, and all that stuff, the guy knew how to play to the camera. At the same time, him coming to your rescue and him helping people was genuine, and that's something he did his entire life.
Yes, he did. Everything about Lyle was black and white. There was no middle area, no gray area. It was right or wrong, and if you didn't want to be on the wrong side of him.
That's and there were plenty of offensive linemen who were on the wrong side of Lyle Alzado, and I'm sure they remember the head slaps and everything else. But as you got close to Lyle, became friends with him, and you chronicle this in the book, you shared something similar in that your backgrounds as kids and your situations as kids, although very different, you both had difficulties, right? Lyle was in an abusive household with his father, well chronicled, everything from what he molested his sisters to being an alcoholic, all that stuff, which really we'll talk about a little later too, because it helped mold what Lyle became and what he was seeking.
Right.
But also it helped bond you guys too, because you grew up, your grandparents raised you.
Right.
And did an amazing job. You talk about them in the book and how awesome they were, and that's phenomenal. But was that something too, that once you got to talk to each other, that helped you become closer?
It bonded us, yes. I mean, I grew up fighting down at the beaches of San Diego, and he grew up in the mean streets of the Bronx.
Yeah,
or Brooklyn,
Yeah, and that's the thing too. You talked about some of those stories, and he would joke around, and you talk about, he would say, well, yeah, I used to have to do some things for some bad guys, i.e. organized crime, that sound like. And you kind of laughed it off a little bit, and he kind of said, no, I'm not kidding, right?
It was real. Yeah.
It's real.
He was an arm breaker for the mob.
Yeah, and that set a course. But at the same time, when you're starting to get to know Lyle Alzado and where he's at in his life, Jim, what did you know immediately about him, besides the fact that he was a good guy, he was loyal, obviously. Loyalty meant so much to him. What did you soon learn after you became close to him that you started to look through and say, hey, this guy is both a great person, but he also has issues, he needs help, or whatever it may be?
Well, you know, what you saw is what you got. I mean, he was like a kindred spirit. I mean, the guy, he was one of the most loving, caring people I'd ever met. And at the same time, he'd be there. He'd jump in like he did to save my life, basically.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And when I was, so I'm 49. So when I was growing up, Lyle was playing during the years that I was sort of in grade school, high school. So I grew up watching him play. I grew up in San Diego as a Charger fan, right? As a kid. So Lyle Alzado, I always loved him because he was crazy. But also at the same time, I was a Charger fan, so you rooted against the Raiders, which is funny because now I'm hosting a Raider show. But it's interesting because that time, I don't think younger Raiders fans too, Jim, understand, and you know this, and you chronicle it in your book, just being around him and traveling with him and all that, is just how famous he was and how beloved he was. Talk about his devotion to the fans.
Well, first of all, when he passed away, he was the 5th most recognizable person in the world.
Wow.
Which says a lot. And it's not all football. It's because of film and TV and just, his toughness and stuff. And he was feared on the field. I mean, legitimately feared. There were people like Matusak that the media hyped up. Lyle scared people. It's like one time Matusak came back into a bar, Poncho's, when we were having a party, and Lyle threw him out in the street when he started picking on players. And Matusak was smart enough not to come back in the bar.
Yeah. It's interesting that time, and we're watching some film here on the video of Lyle and about some of the stories in your book. With that fierceness, the parts of the book that I really enjoyed too, Jim, were the parts where you were just sitting with Lyle at home, right? You guys lived together several different times in different areas and different places, and the banter that you guys had, the conversation. When you had that conversation, what did you learn about Lyle the person that people wouldn't really know because of the big persona?
Well, he was real. He really was, and he cared about kids, and he just he was a great guy. I mean, I don't know what else to say. He really was. He was bigger than life. We'd walk into places and every head would turn because, I mean, I don't care who was in there. He just had an aura about him, and everybody would turn to look at him. Yeah. He was never too, he was genuine. He was never too busy to talk to a fan or to sign an autograph. And yet, if you wanted to fight, he was ready to fight.
Well, and to me, too, the other thing was you chronicle so well the lifestyle that you guys had. And I'm talking about the training piece of it. There was other stuff, too. We'll talk about it. It's a little more fun. But the lifestyle with Lyle and his absolute devotion to staying in shape. Here's a guy who didn't drink, he didn't smoke, and didn't eat poorly either. You guys were on a regimen, the steps, right? Running the steps. Talk about running the steps.
Every morning, rain or shine, we'd be down there at 6 o'clock in the morning. He'd drag me out of bed. We'd go down, we'd run the stairs. I mean, no matter what time I came in at night, we were up and we were down at the stairs doing the 4th Street stairs. After we'd do the stairs, we'd have to go to the Firehouse Deli and we'd eat egg whites, cantaloupe, and chicken every morning. Then we'd go to the gym and we'd lift. And it just, Lyle, he made me eat healthy. I was around him. He wouldn't let me eat anything bad.
Well, and that's the thing, too. For you, Jim, you're wearing your NFL alumni because you played in the league as well, and you played in Europe. Mm-hmm. For you, as a football player, how was that being with a guy who was so focused, who had reached that level that he had reached through hard work, by the way? I mean, you look at Lyle's childhood. We talked about the abuse, the home, and the issues there. But then going to Yankton College, small college in South Dakota, right? And being a 4th-round draft pick, the first ever out of that school, because nobody wanted to give him a shot. What did you learn from him as you started to develop this lifelong, which would be a lifelong bond with him? What did you learn from him for you as a football player?
Well, I mean, he had a drive that I've never seen before. He was so driven. And he would just, it was incredible. I mean, guys like Rod Martin, who played behind him, said he was the best defensive end he'd ever seen play. And that's saying something coming from Rod. And, Rod said Lyle never won anything but 110%. He goes, I never saw him slack off once. He was just full speed ahead. No matter how hurt, no matter how bloody, anything, he'd get back on the field and he'd play.
Yeah.
Not like the players of today. I hate to say that, but it's the truth.
Well, no, and it is, there is a big difference between the players of today and then, and we're going to talk about that and explore it because I think not only will we get into, of course, some of the things that Lyle felt led to his demise, including the steroids, but also just the sheer force and desire to want to win and to do the best that you can to help your team. That's changed a little bit. I mean, it's a different league. There's a lot more money. I mean, Lyle talked about it, $18,000 he made his first year when he was with the Denver Broncos in 1971. All that stuff is fascinating, and I think that it helps understand his personality and how he was different and how today's players are different. But we're going to step aside. And, Jim, when we come back, we'll talk more about Lyle Alzado. And, of course, Jim's amazing new book, The Lyle Alzado Story 77, Nobody's Invincible. So don't go anywhere. We're sitting with Jim Duffner talking about Lyle Alzado here on the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Kids Mix, an ice cream and fun festival, is happening Saturday, July 6th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Galleria at Sunset. Parents
People can portray me any way they want because I don't give a damn. I am what I am, And until those people touch me close enough, they'll never know what I am. If they want to see me in this interview or in a newspaper article and say, what's the matter with this guy? Let them say it. But don't you analyze me and don't you tell me what I am until you get close enough to understand what I am. Then you can make an analysis of me. But don't you dare do it until that.
There you go, the late great Lyle Alzado, and we're here with Jim Duffner, who did get to know him really well, and he's written the book, The Lyle Alzado Story, 77, Nobody's Invincible. I highly recommend for Raider Nation, go out and pick up the book on Amazon today. So, Jim, we've been talking a lot about your friendship with Lyle, and the underlying theme for me when you talk about him as a person, as a player, as a friend, and really as a brother, more than a friend. I mean, he really was a brother for you. Brother from another mother, I think you say it in the book, right?
Yeah.
But with Lyle, the one thing, and you see this a lot with tough guys, with really talented people who are driven, and we just had Todd Marinovich on a couple weeks ago, and he talked about fear driving him, and fear was also a driver for Lyle Alzado. Talk about his fear, what it was, and where it came from.
Well, Lyle came from nothing, basically, and he came from the hard streets, Brownsville, and fighting. And once he made it, I mean, he was lucky to make it.
Sure.
Stan Jones's car broke, and a $10 car part got him to discover Lyle. He went down to Montana Tech to check out some game films and to look at another running back, and it turned, I ended up seeing Lyle and wanted to know who that kid was, and Denver ended up drafting him. But it was fear that drove Lyle. Fear of having to go back to the mean streets that he grew up in. Fear of losing everything that he had. He never wanted to go back to where he came from. And fear, it was a big motivator to Lyle.
Yeah, and it really did. It drove so much of what he became and what he wanted to do. What that fear, though, for you, and those conversations you chronicle in the book, which are very, very personal, and some of them seem so matter of fact the way they started, but then they would kind of go down a road into things that were much more deeper, and you could kind of get a sense for what Lyle was thinking and what might be bothering him. But the one thing that sticks out too is that lack of a relationship with his father and that lack of a good example for his father to set. You grew up with your grandparents. Your grandparents set a wonderful example for you.
They were my parents, yeah.
Yeah. And they set that example. And being the father of 5 kids myself, I know I have to set that example at home. That relationship with his dad, at the end of the day, was that really the hole in his heart that was really something he could never fill?
It really was. Al Davis is the one that came around, and Lyle had been yearning for a dad his whole life. And Al Davis is the closest thing that he ever had to a dad. And he loved Al Davis.
Well, and
stuff. And I mean, Lyle, he always yearned to have a relationship with his dad. And after he made it big in Denver, and he was one of the stars of the Orange Crush, or the star of the Orange Crush, he went to see his dad in prison. And his dad wanted nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
It just broke Lyle's heart more. And that was the last time Lyle saw him.
Well, and that's the thing too, is when you tell that story in the book, you as the reader, and this is why you did such a great job with the book, as a reader, you're thinking to yourself, okay, so he's going to get that moment where dad finally, at least, even though he's in jail, at least says, hey, I'm proud of what you did. And he got the opposite. And for me, my heart sank reading those words because that's all he wanted, right? It's what he wanted. So for him, in your view, though, Jim, when you look at Lyle and being around him as much as you were, where did he look? Where did he look falsely to find that acceptance and that love?
In women, he picked up a lot of the wrong women.
Yeah,
he wasn't very lucky when it came to love. Well, neither one of us were, truthfully. But being married and divorced,
sure.
I can say that.
Sure.
Yeah, no, Lyle, he had an empty hole in his heart, and he was always trying to fill it. And he just never really did. I mean, playing for the Raiders was probably the closest thing to filling his heart because he loved Tom Flores and he loved Al Davis, and they both loved him back. He was Al Davis's favorite player. I mean, Al told me that.
Yeah.
I got to talk to Al because of Lyle. He knew how close Lyle and I were, so he would talk to me.
Yeah, and I mean, you even talk about, and we'll get a little more into his sickness in our last piece with you after the break. But for Lyle too, that finding happiness, right? That's a theme I see in your book too. It was very hard for him to find. He found it in moments, and clearly the defining moment was when he won the Super Bowl with the Raiders. I mean,
Right.
going to the Raiders, number one, then finding Al Davis. And then winning the Super Bowl. But that relationship with Al Davis, since you're talking about it, let's go there, was really remarkable because they shared a lot in common coming from New York and both growing up on the rough streets and all of that. What was it about Lyle, do you think, in your conversations with Mr. Davis, what did he see in Lyle that led to that close relationship between them?
Well, he saw intensity. And he saw a guy that loved silver and black the same way he loved silver and black. I mean, that's all that meant anything to Al. And Lyle, he gave it 110% on every single play. They came from the same streets. He knew the kind of upbringing Lyle had. And he just, he'd always wanted Lyle to play for him. And, and Lyle yearned for a father figure. And he said once he got to the Raiders, he got to do things that he couldn't do anywhere else. He goes, that was football. That's the way his whole career should have been. But they just kind of turned him loose.
Well, and that's what he said over and over, and you say in your book too, is that he really was meant to be a Raider. I mean, Lyle was that anti-hero,
He
right?
was the epitome of a Raider.
Right,
Raider.
He really was.
Yeah.
And so for him to get there, he started to find that happiness, and of course he continued to dominate on the field. For someone who played professional football, talk about that for a minute. Going against Lyle, I mean, you see it. He still is the only guy who has a rule named after him, right? The Lyle Alzado rule, which was about removing your helmet, because Lyle against the Jets removed, and I forgot the guy's name now, the lineman.
Ward.
Ward, yeah. He takes off his helmet, and then he threw it. He basically used it as a weapon and then got flagged, and then the NFL comes out with a rule. But playing against Lyle on the field, you've talked to many, many guys who did. And what was it about him on the field? Was it what we now call that motor? It just didn't stop?
It was the motor that didn't stop, his aggressiveness, and he just put it all out there on the line. And he was, he was aggressive. He was one of the most aggressive, toughest football players to ever play.
Yeah, some of those images of him both in the Broncos helmet and the Raiders helmet, mostly I see with him with the blood, the broken nose, because I don't know how many times he broke his nose, probably dozens, because he was so hardcore at it. But that intensity, I think, that helped because you had the great Raiders teams of the 70s, right, with all those guys that played. And then as it moved into the 80s, Lyle really picked up that mantle. And then with his young protege at the time, Howie Long, comes along, and they kind of started to create that, and it led to the Super Bowl year. For him, though, in finding that happiness and being on the Raiders, was it ever going to end up differently, do you think, for him? Was he ever going to find happiness?
It's hard to say. I mean, it really is hard to say. I know once he got to the Raiders, he was ecstatic. It was like he was reborn again. He was starting all over, fresh, like a rookie with the knowledge of a veteran. And he did whatever it took to get on the field and to be successful. And Al Davis and Tom Flores admired him for that. Tom said he was the best player that he'd ever coached. He was his and Al's favorite. Al Davis said the same thing, because he was a winner. He would do anything it took to win. He put, the team, Al Davis, and the fans above himself.
Yeah.
And he would do anything he never wanted to disappoint him.
Yeah, yeah. And for you, Jim, talk about what that relationship meant for you in your life as you were going. I mean, we all go through our own issues, right? We all have our own ups and downs. For you, being along on that journey with him, talk about the impact it had on you.
Well, I miss him. I miss him every day. I grew to love the big guy and stuff, my arm from getting smacked all the time. And I still have a scar, from where he hit me and I fell into a spike. you
Oh, my
know, and I
gosh.
cut my arm. But no, I just I don't know. I think about him a lot, and a lot of times when I want to give up or I want to not do something, I think about Lyle, and I do it. Even when he was sick, he would go down to 4th Street the day he got out of the hospital, and he'd do more stairs than most human beings could, because he was determined to build himself back up.
Amazing. A man with a brain tumor continuing that workout, just remarkable. We're going to step aside again. We're talking to Jim Duffner, wrote the story, the Lyle Alzado story, 77, Nobody's Invincible book you can catch on Amazon right now. I highly recommend it. When we come back, we're going to talk about, unfortunately, Lyle's health decline and his eventual passing and what impact he may have had on the game as a result of that. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
kids from making the mistakes that he made. And he'd started on steroids at Yankton College is when he was introduced for the first time, and he never got off them until he got on the human growth hormone. And a lot of people say it wasn't the HGH that caused it, or it was cadaver, or this, that, and the other. It was synthetic. I know. I lent him the money to buy it, so I know. And when he died, there were 13 cases of the type of lymphoma that he had. It was a rare type, and there were 13 cases in the United States, and 11 out of the 13 were on HGH. And it just, in East Germany, there were a lot of them. Yeah, everybody's body has cancer cells in them. You never know what's going to kick off the cancer cells. And they believed that Lyle, since he was on steroids for so many years, that once, he got on the HGH, it kicked off the cancer cells. His immune system was down. He believed it. His doctor believed it. And so I believe it.
Yeah, no, and it's hard to argue. And seeing, it's hard to look at. I mean, I can imagine for you as someone who was so close to him, to see him towards the end of his life because of the drastic change in his physical appearance. But the way he came out and said, look, I lied. I did steroids. I did human growth hormone. I don't want anybody to go through what I'm going through. It's unfortunate because I think he's been punished for it. He's been punished for it because, in my view, looking at statistically his career, he should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There's no question in my mind. But he came out, he broke that code of silence, right?
Right.
But he also, I think, his lasting legacy, I don't think people necessarily give him the credit that he's due by coming out like he did to ensure that people understood the issue and that they could start to address it. I'm not saying the issue's gone away, because we've been talking about that it hasn't. There's still performance-enhancing drugs being taken in all sports. But do you think if Lyle could come back today and see what's going on, do you think he would be happy with the impact that he had at that moment and ongoing?
Well, he'd be happy. If he knew that he helped one kid, he would be happy. At one time, his whole life revolved around making it into the Hall of Fame. That's what he wanted to do. He didn't want to tarnish his career. But he came out selfishly and spoke against steroids, spoke against his mistakes, trying to help, as many kids as he could. And he got a lot of letters, from people thanking him. And there was a lot of response. I was going to get on it, but because of you, I'm not going to get on it. And, there's a lot of naysayers out there, but there always are. But Lyle, his heart was into helping kids. He didn't care whether he got in the Hall of Fame or not. He's not in it, but his bronze is in
it. That's right. Again, Jim Duffner, author of the Lyle Alzado story, 77, Nobody's Invincible. And Jim, for you, and I know too that, in your book, faith plays a strong piece as well. Towards, Lyle was not a religious person, but towards the end of his life, did he find some meaning for him that went beyond just this plane and where he's at? Did he find some of that inner peace that you want to see people maybe gain a little bit before their time is up?
Yeah, he did. He accepted the Lord into his heart. And after that, it changed his whole persona. And that's when he came out wanting to help kids and wanting to keep them from making the mistake. He always wanted to help kids, and he always was helping kids. He did more for children's organizations and things than anybody I know. But at the end, he didn't care at all about himself. It was more about helping people.
Yeah, and I know the touching stories you have, of course, the photos of Lyle and his son, Justin, also are in there as well. And, terrible. As a father, the worst thing I can think of is leaving my kids before they're grown up and all that stuff. And I know for him, too, that was a big issue, and he loved his son very, very much. As you look back at this, too, and this journey you're on, this book, you talk about it, that this was something you promised your friend that you would do if he didn't make it, correct?
Yeah, I did. I promised him I'd do it, and his wife at the time, after Lyle passed, supposedly had a book deal and had a film project coming out, and so I put it on the back burner and forgot about it. And then out of the blue, it just started weighing heavy on my mind.
Yeah.
And it was like Lyle was bugging me to get going. and stuff. And I mean,
he's getting you on the stairs again.
Yeah, to get me on the stairs. And it just, I did some praying about it because I really wasn't sure what I was going to do, and how I was going to write it. I'm not a writer, and so I did some praying about it. And then, to please give me a sign if I'm supposed to, do this endeavor and write this book. Well, I was at Caesar's Palace walking down a corridor, and a guy approached me and said, "Excuse me, can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure." He goes, "Does Buffalo mean anything to you?" Which caught me completely off guard, and I said, "I played there." And he goes, "What about the number 77? And I said, "That was my best friend's number, Lyle Alzado." He was a fan of Lyle's, so we talked about it for a few minutes. And then he told me out of the blue, he asked me if I believed in God, and I said, "I do. I owe everything to God." And he goes, "I'm an ordained bishop, and God had been talking to me the last couple nights. And he told me I was going to meet you today." And I was kind of like, okay. Just trying to take it all in and going. And he said, "He's got a message for you. You have one last ride." And, then he handed me his business card and took off for the airport. And I was sort of in shock, trying to figure it all out and just wowed by it. Did some more praying that night. The next day, I was at Outback Steakhouse waiting for, gave Outback a plug, which I'm, but anyway,
okay. That's all right.
I was waiting for my aunt to park her car. In the book, I said a friend, but it was my aunt parking her car. And a guy walked by me and with a cane, and he stopped and he goes, "Is that real?" He was referring to my hat. I had a Players Association hat on. And I said, "Yes, it is." And he goes, "My old college roommate gave me one just like it when he was playing for the Broncos." And I said, "Lyle?" And he goes, "Yeah." He was stunned that I knew.
Crazy.
I was stunned because he was just traveling through Las Vegas. He was hungry, saw the restaurant, pulled over. He was on his way to see Lyle's first wife down in Long Beach. And I kind of went, wow. A few days later, I'm at the Jewelers of Las Vegas.
Sure.
And I started talking to some lady who was having a diamond bracelet done. And she was in a conversation. Then all at once she got a weird look on her face. And she said, "I don't know why, but I've got the strongest urge to tell you you've got one last ride." And when she said that, it blew me away. But I knew in my heart, well, I got to start writing this.
Wow.
And that's what got me to write the book.
Just a remarkable story. And again, I invite people to go pick it up. Lyle Alzado's story, 77, Nobody's Invincible. Again, Jim, you did a great job honoring your friend and really helping us get to know him better. Because I think that's the thing for those of us that weren't older than, of age. For me, I was a teenager. I didn't get to know him very much. And I think today we lose so much of the human value of people because of the way the media is. And so it's very good that we were able to do that. Can you imagine, before we let you go, and we appreciate you coming in and loved having you here, what would Lyle think about the Raiders coming to Las Vegas? You guys spent a lot of good times here at the Shark Club, which is an old haunt of mine, too. What would he say about the Raiders being in Las Vegas?
He'd probably love it. He'd probably want to come back and play again. Try a second comeback, knowing Lyle.
Oh, well, in closing, too, and again, thank you for coming in and for doing such a great book.
Thank you.
If people had to know one thing about Lyle, again, and I know you've mentioned a lot of the things before, but if they want to leave this conversation and remember your friend, what one thing do you want them to remember most about Lyle? They'll remember the football, but what is it off the field that you'd want them to know?
He was honest, and everything was black and white, and he spoke it. He loved people, and he wanted to help the fans, and he loved the fans, and he was a good guy.
Yeah, and if football misses him, I know everybody misses him because he was such a great person on the field, off the field. He was just so fun and always had time for fans. You talked about him being the 5th most recognizable in the world at the time of him getting sick and passing away, but he always made time for people.
Yeah,
and that's remarkable.
There were numerous times we'd be sitting in a restaurant and somebody would walk by, want an autograph, and he'd invite him to sit down, have dinner with us, and then pick up the check. It was Lyle. He'd give anything to anybody.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Jim, thank you again for coming in and for talking about Lyle with us today.
Okay, thanks for having me, and I appreciate it.
All right, and we're going to step aside real quick. We come back and we'll close out the show. You have been listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. Don't go anywhere.
Morning at 11 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Thanks again to Jim Duffner, the Lyle Alzado story 77. Nobody's invincible. Just a great conversation. Jim's a great guy. What a way to remember your friend. And Kelly, you brought up a good point, though. When you think about Lyle Alzado being such a great Raider, 80% of his career was not spent with the Raiders.
Yeah, it's nobody remembers the Cleveland or really Bronco years. I mean, it's like
I remember the Bronco years only because of the Orange Crush and the Cowboy, and they got crushed.
Well, but that's the thing. You know the name Orange Crush, but you don't associate. I mean, like I said, when you think of Lyle Alzado, it is as a Raider. That just shows the impact you can have to where you've got a career that long and 3 years defines kind of a career that long.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know, it's a remarkable story. And like I said to Jim when he was here in the studio, in a time when not a lot of people have loyalty or show loyalty, here's a guy who has kept loyalty even though his friend has been gone for a while and came around to write his book. Jim just beat cancer himself. So for him, you know, to do this is a big deal. And so we appreciate that. And I can't believe it. We're out of time. We didn't even get to Kelly's Corner. Said save Ted Ginn for next week.
No, Ted Ginn, shut up. I'll just leave it at that.
That's it. All right. I want to thank you guys all for joining us here on the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We'll be back next week. Thanks for joining us. And I want to thank my engineer, David Stepanian, also our intern now, Anthony Farina, who's here, and my co-host, Kelly Kreiner. For Kelly Kreiner, for Chaz Osborne, International Man of Leisure, I'm Scott Branson. Talk to you next time.
The best place to watch UFC.